Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues. Guess if you ain't at the table, you on the menu. And I'm that spitter, baby. They don't want you to see, but everybody's south of Capitol Hill's rocking with me. Boys smoke the trays and ponder getting their life together. I'm comfortable with my role, so I'm like, whatever. Me, I ain't got a job, but I work hard. And you don't work hard, but you got a job. The irony is I'm judged while you feel the applause. I'm slept on, that's why I had to set this alarm. My dudes is armed, I'm armed with this arm charm. Body banging like she got that cream from Barry Bonds. Yeah.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
That Dre season is here, a real hitter with a mic, I'm everything that they fear. With that, hood ain't the same, I was all on their ass, I'm level-headed. So yo, my dudes love when I spaz, and I'm so over Seattle's passive-aggressive attitude. They don't call you back, what they really saying is F you. While I'm from the same place, I move at a different pace. I prefer if you just said it to my face, damn, I did it.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it
I
for
hate these
us.
average dudes with they average spit, writing average rhymes, knocking average chicks. The closer I get, I can feel the people starting to shift. I'm loyal to a fault, and everybody can't come with. Rap's a rich man's game, I'm only playing with change. They bang models and singers, I'm knocking my old flame, I'm different. The crowd, I move with the chosen few. Black thoughts, I could be the front man for the roots. No diamonds and gold, I'm on my sticks and stones. If we can see your panty line, you should have on a thong. My team is strong, through this fire we forged a bond. And they already know what it is when I get on. To the hearse, party like it's December 31st. When I'm on my deathbed, I probably cracking my nurse. You ain't got the bars to compete. I'm a verbal athlete, deflating these boys so they say that I cheat. Damn, I did it.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Yeah. I should probably start by apologizing for the long wait, man. You know, I know I be tripping. But I'm not just a rapper, I'm an artist. And, you know, my creative process is a little bit different than most. Nonetheless, I want to welcome everybody out to the Dre's Experience. I got TCF in the building. My whole camp's here with me. I got the band in here laying this cool-ass vibe. And I'm Seattle's own. Let's get into it.
I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna live.
All right, good morning. Welcome to the morning update show. My name is Omari Salisbury. At Trey Holiday, she's on vacation all this week. It's very well deserved. So I'm with you for the next 1 hour. Got a great show lined up today. We've got Nakeya Isabell from Seattle Theater Group's ELEVATE production. We're going to be talking to Nakeya up first. And after that, candidate for mayor of Seattle, former City of Seattle council member Bruce Harrell is in the building. See, I got it right. Bruce Harrell's in the building. So we're going to be talking to Bruce as well. As usual, though, want to tell you right now is the perfect opportunity for you to tag and share the stream. Go ahead and tag and share the stream with people who you feel will benefit from culturally relevant news and information emanating from right here in the Emerald City. As usual, got to give a big shout out to our partners over at the South Seattle Emerald and also KBCS 91.3 out there at Bellevue College. Make sure you give them a listen. Just going to go over a few quick things and then we're going to take a break and we're going to bring Nakeya in. What do we have here? Oh, our podcast. We can't forget that. You know, you can listen to the Morning Update show and all of Converge Media shows anywhere where you listen to your favorite podcast. So be it SoundCloud, Google, Apple, Spotify. Let's see, there's our SoundCloud page right there. You can listen to the Morning Update show at your leisure. Every show is usually up there about 2 hours after we get off air. And also our queens have been getting a lot of feedback the Queens of Converge. If you haven't checked out that article that's up there on our website, you can go to the blog. There it is. The Queens of Converge. Black women media professionals find authenticity and community at Converge Media. And we'll put that link in the comments. Go ahead and click on that story and make sure and share it. Let's let the world know about these queens over here at Converge. Moving along, one of our big supporters and part of the Converge family, and somebody who I've literally went around the world several times with, want to give a big birthday shout out to my main man, my number one DJ, DJ Topspin.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
All right, Topspin, like they like to say, man, you're not getting older, you're just getting better. And also, I got one more thing here before we go to break. This is actually from KUOW, and they interviewed Marshall Hugh of the Marshall Law Band, and Marshall talked about the things that got him and the hospitality and the rest of the band together to actually come and play during the Western Barricade. Like the band was literally playing on. I think some of you guys that were watching last week when we had Marshall Hugh on, he was telling the story, but here he is recounting some of it to KUOW.
I had come out to the protest after George Floyd was murdered, and just as a participant with signs and yelling with the crowd, and it was empowering, but it was also very exhausting. So I took a couple of days off, and I was in my bed watching Omari Salisbury's live stream, and he had gotten pepper sprayed for the 4th day in a row. And he started screaming, "Where's the leadership? Where's the leadership?"
Anybody, if you're listening to this stream, this is an opportunity for leadership in this city. All leaders stand up. This is an opportunity for leadership.
And I was sitting at home in my bed, and it just felt like a direct call out to me. I'm like, I'm here comfortable while one of my brothers is out here getting pepper sprayed for the 4th day in a row. I know I'm a leader. I know I am. But I do it differently. So I just chose to call my drummer, the hospitality, and I said, hey, I don't know how it's going to work, what we're going to do, but we're going to lead through music and community and bring the band out here tomorrow.
Martial Law right there on KUOW. You can find that full interview on the KUOW website. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we have Nakeya Isabell, mentor and spoken word artist, part of Seattle Theater Group's Elevate. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Back on this rap ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
Hey, it's Jake from Converge Media and Get the F Outside. I hope that all of you are taking advantage of the ability to be outdoors and enjoy nature as our summer months heat up. One other thing that you can take advantage of here in the King County area are free COVID-19 vaccinations. There's all kinds of options for pop-up clinics, and the vaccine is able to be administered to anyone 12 years and older. And did I mention that it's free? You don't need insurance, and they don't care what your citizenship status is. And that kind of sounds like the way things should be anyhow, but we'll save that for another conversation. Information and resources are available at kingcounty.gov/COVID, or you can call the COVID-19 call center at 206-477-3977. Washington, we are almost out of this, but we got to stay locked in for the home stretch. Let's get vaxxed out so we can max out our time with friends, family, and in the great outdoors.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. That's part of the promo right there from Elevate, Seattle Theater Group production. It's on June 16th at 6:30. And like we've been doing almost every week, we've had a guest from one way or another from the Elevate production. Want to welcome Nakeya Isabell to the Morning Update Show.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, what's happening?
Yo, it's sunny in Seattle. It's not raining, so I don't think any of us are complaining, but I'm excited.
All right, good stuff. We're excited to have you here, too. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about Elevate?
Elevate is a program that seeks to elevate the voices of young Black youth and elders to bring hope, perspective, light, love. I think there's so much going on in the community, and so it's just a way to elevate their voices. A lot of times young people will go to the elders or we'll go to everybody else, but young people, they kind of get lost in the sauce. So Elevate is just an opportunity for us to hear from some young people, and honestly, they have some dope things to say, and I'm excited for the community to hear from them.
Right, and in your title there, it said mentor, as well as spoken word artist. But tell us about some of the mentoring that you did over there as part of the Elevate production.
Yeah, I think it was super dope because I had the opportunity to help the young people open up and use their voice. So it was dope to see them go from shy, kind of self-conscious to secure and owning their dopeness and being unapologetic about that. And so our group was called United Souls. They made up that name, and we are talking from everything about Kamala Harris to George Floyd to just us rising up and making a difference. So shout out to Denasia, Gianni, and Harmony, because they absolutely killed it. And I'm not gonna spill the beans because you all gotta sign up and watch it. But I'm so grateful, and shout out to STG and Converge, because without you all, we couldn't get the word out. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity, but it was dope.
No, we're definitely happy to play our part. You guys are the big part. This is this is a small part that we're doing over here. What drew you into it, though? You know, there's a lot of stuff, especially here in Seattle, since the murder of George Floyd. There was a lot of different groups, organizations, even groups like STG, community groups that were trying to do all kinds of different things. And a lot of them are really great. What made you decide to partner with STG on Elevate?
For sure. Well, Shakia Danielson is a community member. I think she's the one who came to me with the idea, and I trust her and I support what she's doing. And so anything that's about like community, you know, especially our Black community, because I think oftentimes we're hashtags, but what about we need to celebrate our lives while we're alive, you know what I mean? And so for Shakia to reach out to me and tell me about this opportunity that included young people being able to empower their voice, as well as multi-generational, hearing from the seasoned folk. I think that was dope. So an opportunity for me to come in and partner and authentically be myself and help pull that out of young people, I was game.
What did you take away from this experience?
I think that what I took away from this experience is that we can never underestimate the power of art. You know, and it's so important for us to tell our stories, and art is a way that, you know, it can make people emotional, but people can't argue with your experience. You know, you talked about George Floyd. My cousin was Charlene Laus, and so I think being able to kind of reflect on that, next week is going to be, 17, 18, 19, 20, 4-year death anniversary, you know what I mean? So being able to talk with young people about that, hear from their perspective, hear their emotions, allow them to process that. So for me, it's like, I took away, don't ever shrink. Be exactly who you are. You know, there's a quote by Oscar Wilde. It says, everyone is already taken. Be yourself. You know what I mean? So I just think that it's so important. We all have light and love and hope in us, you know? And we're better together than divided. And so I took away, like, don't shrink from who you are. Everybody needs who you are. There's billions of people in the world, but there's nobody like you. So I want to help the young people recognize that, especially in this generation where, you know, there's imagery, there's social media, all these things that is kind of contrary to who they really are. So empowering them to be, because they matter, you know? They are the now and they're the future. So I took away, like, let me be them myself so I can empower them to be themselves.
Yeah, that's dope. That's fire right there. And we'll continue, as we have been, and we will continue to say her name, Charlene Laus.
Yeah.
Right here on Converge. We got to let you go, but before we do, the title said mentor, but it also says spoken word artist. You got anything for us today?
Sure. Okay, I'm going to give you all a little sneak peek. Sign up, come. It's free, it's virtual, and this is just a little bit of my part, the narrator. Welcome to the More, where we will explore the side door to implore you to acknowledge its history while you experience its beauty. You see, this will be an emotional roller coaster of twists and turns, highs and lows, peaks and valleys, but most importantly, we will speak truth. And I'll leave you with the cliffhanger right there.
All right. That's what's up. Yeah, now this is the 16th of this month, 6:30. And we've put the link over there in the comments as well. It's a virtual event.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? We've been fortunate enough over here to just see bits and pieces. You guys been holding this stuff real tight. We get the bits and pieces. Nakeya, Isabell, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you all.
All right. We're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, we're joined by candidate for mayor of Seattle, Bruce Harrell. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Back on this rap ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't missing my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own, tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
Hey, it's Jake from Converge Media and Get the F Outside. I hope that all of you are taking advantage of the ability to be outdoors and enjoy nature as our summer months heat up. One other thing that you can take advantage of here in the King County area are free COVID-19 vaccinations. There's all kinds of options for pop-up clinics, and the vaccine is able to be administered to anyone 12 years and older. And did I mention that it's free? You don't need insurance, and they don't care what your citizenship status is. And that kind of sounds like the way things should be anyhow, but we'll save that for another conversation. Information and resources are available at kingcounty.gov/COVID, or you can call the COVID-19 call center at 206-477-3977. Washington, we are almost out of this, but we got to stay locked in for the home stretch. Let's get vaxxed out so we can max out our time with friends, family, and in the great outdoors.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. I'm your host, Omari Salisbury. My partner in crime, Trey Holiday, is on vacation all this week. And now welcoming to the set, once again to the Morning Update Show, candidate for mayor, Bruce Harrell. How are you?
I'm good. You struggle with that last name, don't you? Thanks for having me back.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming back.
Absolutely.
It's good to have you here. You know, we sometimes when politicians or people running for office come in and the conversation is just all about the issues, which, you know, of course it should be. But, you know, I've had this week to myself, so I'm more relaxed kind of, and it's more time, you know, is basically what I'm saying. So we went in the time machine here. Ike Everhart, he's a big Husky fan. We went in the time machine here, and we got a photo of you. We'll put this up here. That's you right there, number 55, the Sun Bowl, 1979, huh?
Calling his shots. And my best friend, number 73, continues to be my best friend on my right. I spoke with him early this morning. He said, don't embarrass him. His name is Doug Martin, and I love him to death. We've been fishing since those days, and we continue to fish to this day, catching crappie.
All right. What was your best Husky memory?
1978 Rose Bowl. We were underdogs. No one expected us to win. We were playing in front of millions of people, just underdogs. And Warren Moon was our quarterback. Doug and I were starters on the defense, and we won that game. We defied all odds. And I think because of that, our friendships remain intact to this day. And it's nice being the underdog in a situation where literally millions of people didn't give us a chance.
Yeah. It's like, I remember when I was a kid, we had to earn it back then. When I was a kid, I used to sell programs out in front of it was Husky Stadium, but I was stationed right over there by Heck Ed, trying to get people to come over the bridge, and I would be selling actually the Seattle Times, because Seattle Times had like the program in it and everything else. And if I was lucky, someone would always give me a ticket. You know what I'm saying? And so I'd be up in there in Husky Stadium, as a kid, like, wow, it's an amazing experience.
Well, one thing that people don't know about the University of Washington, they see a lot of our current stars and stars in the last couple of decades, but the University of Washington did not actively recruit in the Central District around Franklin and Garfield. They had a history of not recruiting. And Coach Don James, I think one of the greatest coaches to come out of there, actively went to Garfield and sat in my living room. And again, excuse me, I did not have a lot of people that had gone to school. I'm aging myself a little bit, but you may remember under his predecessor, Coach Jim Owens, all of the black football players were in protest, and they were very organized because of the treatment of African-American football players. And so we grew up knowing that there was an issue, but Coach James was way in front of his time and recruited right there. And then, of course, Anthony Allen followed me the next year. My coach, Al Roberts, who was the coach at Garfield, came to the University of Washington. So I was sort of part of a movement to the University of Washington that, again, after me, produced so many great athletes coming out of Garfield, Franklin, Rainier Beach, Cleveland, the whole South End.
Yeah, the dog father, Coach James. All right, well, it's good stuff, man. Well, clearly you're running for office, and sometimes we sit in here and we'd be like, man, I don't know why anybody would want this job. But that's a good starting point. I know we've asked you that before, but our audience is always changing. Why are you running for mayor of Seattle?
Well, I ask myself that sometimes, and I say that in jest because it's a very, very tough job, and the job has not been a great success for many of our past mayors. And one of the either sad or issues that I have to deal with on occasion is I realize I'm a public figure, having been in office for 12 years, and a lot of people just don't know me. They haven't had coffee with me or haven't worked on a project with me, and so I see some things people say or write, and it's just not truthful or it's inaccurate, and I'm a big target, and that's the discouraging part where people will say, well, he stands for this or he said this, and they take things out of context. The encouraging part is that this city has been rebuilt a few times. They've sort of reinvented themselves over the course of years. When people complain about gentrification now as an example, they don't realize, people like me that have been around for a while, that I can take you down Rainier Avenue South as an example, and I could tell you what you think is new or older, what used to be there 20 years ago, 25 years ago. When I talk to people about the Milk Barn or Rainier Cinema or things like that were moved out, Happy Valley Restaurant, where we had fond memories of having good food and fellowshipping with friends, that when those places are gone and people are seeing what's happening now, they think, oh, this is happening now. No, there's been a systematic, institutional events that have occurred in our city that just didn't start in the last 4 or 5, 6 years. And so I think that I draw upon an experience and a passion for people and for the city that quite honestly is unprecedented in many ways because I've lived through it. And again, I'll take Rainier Valley Community Development Fund as a prime example. That when we looked at the light rail going down south, that now people marvel at and say, this is a good thing for our community. Yes, it is. But the original plans were for light rail to be below ground. Yeah. So what we did then is we were involved in our Save Our Valley effort, and then I was involved in incorporating a $50 million institution to make sure that our residents and our small businesses could stay in our community. That was 20 years ago. I actually served as its executive director for a while until we found a new one. So when I see major events that have occurred in this city, and now with the George Floyd murder, with businesses that have been around for 20 or 30 years going out of business, with police reform, the urgent need for it, I think now is the time to get involved. And that's the inspiration. That's what wakes me up in the morning, that I think that someone that has been doing this work, who you can go anywhere in the city, who people who worked with me. There are people that I went to kindergarten with, the TT Minor on my campaign team, says, well, Bruce has been doing the same things and fighting for the same things. So that's what encourages me about running for mayor.
All right.
You're a good listener, man. That's why you're good. You let me go on and on.
No,
Go on and interrupt me.
No, but this is, don't worry. You get to talking crazy, I'm going to interrupt you. But the thing is we want to bring people on here. This is an educational platform. So it's not necessarily for my ego. It's for our viewers to be able to learn something. You touched on gentrification. I know that MHA is one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about. Can you put up the slide there that says MHA? Seattle Housing Affordability Law forces hardworking homeowners to pay ransom for building permit. And this was an article in the Institute for Justice. Yeah. And so, in one part of the conversation, clearly people, we hear you like, man, against gentrification and everything else. There is a segment, especially elders in the black community in the Central District, who are fairly upset at you about MHA and what the MHA and upzoning has done to them and, to their taxes, to permits and everything else. What is your position on MHA, and is the MHA rolled out the way that you expected it to back when you were backing it?
Yeah. So, again, I've read criticisms about my support and, quite candidly, the full council's support, because it was a 9-0 vote, the full council's support for MHA. And so I like the opportunity to explain why we passed it. So first of all, you have to look at the context with which it came into being. That was part of the HALA work, the Housing Affordability and Living Advisory Committee. And we looked at 65 recommendations on how to prevent gentrification and how to keep a more diverse residents living in our city. 65 recommendations. And when I say we, it was not the council, it were community advocates, community groups, people of color, people from the faith-based community, et cetera. And many of those recommendations, such as making sure people with convictions on their criminal record could have access to housing, making sure people had access to capital, making sure that in order to keep people in their homes, their existing homes, we make sure they had access to capital. Tax exemption programs, being aggressive there, such that we know taxes alone could force people out of the houses. So we looked at the HALA recommendations, and we looked at what the city had already done to some extent successfully in South Lake Union and downtown, and that was if builders wanted to go up or have an increased floor area ratio, FAR, they had to pay into a fund for affordable housing. Now, there was an argument as to whether the affordable housing had to be in South Lake Union or downtown or anywhere in the city, so we relaxed that standard such that if they want extra square footage, they have to pay in the fund. And that is how we're going to make sure we get affordable housing. So the intent on MHA was to build a fund for affordable housing. So then when the HALA committee looked at that, again with all of the players who fight against gentrification, when they elected to pass their recommendations with MHA onto the council that we passed, it was precisely for that. So now, what does it intend to do? It intends to do exactly that. Look at multifamily units, allow the developer to have more square footage to go higher, and to pay into a fund or build within the unit affordable housing, 60% of area median income as an example. So what I tell to critics, and these are fine people, we're all trying to get to the same place. Who in their right mind want people with lower income to be forced out of the city, right? Assume a positive.
Is that a trick question?
No, I mean,
there's
because
a lot
no
of
one
people
says
that want poor people to get pushed out the city.
Well, I'm talking about the people making the decisions. You don't get elected on that platform. You don't have a council of 9 who I believe are committed to affordable housing, and even the mayors. And particularly go to the Seattle.gov website and look at the holler recommendation. Literally, there were, I like being accurate on my facts, but I want to say 40 to 50 entities, many of the names you'll recognize from the housing community, making these recommendations. So now, to answer your question directly, is it working out the way it's supposed to be? Is it pushing people out and allowing developers to just ignore the needs of the community? Well, that's exactly what we're going to look at under my Race and Data initiative. You see, I don't like arguing in theory. I like looking at the data, just like we did for COVID. So, but we have to also understand something, that we are fighting some laws of economics that are really, really tough. Our city is a rich city, right? When you have Amazon and Microsoft and Starbucks and Boeing, and we have the high-tech industries here, we are bringing in 2019, I want to say we're bringing in about 1,000 people a week for some of these jobs. And so that's just the nature of a large city.
Well, I think that one of the issues, that at least I hear in my community, your community, the Central District, is that how come areas like Magnolia and Queen Anne aren't being upzoned like the Central District is?
Well, what I anticipate is, number one, you do have historical wealth in certain areas. I mean, that's just a reality of it. And so there's been a lot of talk about how we handle single-family zoning, and sort of the, there's arguments that that's a racist design to begin with, because rich people could decide to stay in their homes and poor people are forced to look at other alternatives. So what I've proposed many times, and I was one of the supporters of the ADUs and DADUs, the attached dwelling units, to allow people some flexibility. But you will see again that I think we have zoning capacity for a couple of 100,000 more units. And so the areas become, what areas make sense right now? Access to transit, access to jobs, access to social services, trying to have a walkable community. We relaxed the parking requirements, as an example. And people said, man, you got to force, we get tired of all these cars around the city. So we relaxed the parking requirements, realizing that often we're trying to encourage people to use transit and other modes of transportation to get as creative as possible. So under my Race and Data initiative, we're looking at precisely that. Where are there outcomes that clearly demonstrate disparity? And not just for housing, that's a critical component. Jobs, educational outcomes, health outcomes, access to food. See, one of the arguments I have with particularly people on either the far left or the far right of the political spectrum is everyone's sort of accusatory. Wow, that MHA is bad, or this is bad. And I will say, I listen to you, I feel your pain, but I have to look at the data. I like looking at the numbers.
Well, and the numbers are important. And to really, make a lot of concise decisions, the data and the numbers are important. I think that there's also the flip side of it, where we have to look at the human experience and, the emotional impact. I would say this, though, on MHA, because I know a lot of the people who are impacted and everything else. I'd like to take this conversation even offline. Maybe we get all these people together with you in a room and, have some coffee, and you can hear people's experience. So then it isn't just vicariously through the internet or through this and that and everything else. Because I know with that and matching with the data that you talk about, then there's even bigger picture of what people are facing.
Well, first of all, that's how I work. I don't work in my office or with microphones and TVs on. As people know, the work I've done with your brother, Harrell Esquire Club, which, by the way, is the largest facility that was on the brink of bankruptcy and had few members and no strategic plan, that what we did was we gathered and we met over coffee, and we met at homes, had pizza, more than that to eat, actually, and mapped out a strategic plan and got our memberships and saved the building. And that's critically important when you're talking about cultural preservation, not just brick and mortar, cultural preservation. And so I welcome that work. And I'd also tell you another element that's really not talked about in the discussion of housing, that when my black grandfather came here from Louisiana, and my father and their brothers went to a school earlier, well, my father was too young, but they went to a school called McDonough 35 down in New Orleans, Louisiana. Look it up. McDonough 35 was the only public school during then where African Americans could attend. And my two uncles came here and graduated from the University of Washington in the 50s, okay? They came here for what? Jobs, opportunity, housing. So my grandfather built a home down around the Arboretum. And I look at the Japanese side of my family. They came here for what? Jobs, opportunity, and housing. And so in the African American community, as an example, the owning of real estate has been our primary asset to create wealth in our community. And so I am passionate about making sure that we create wealth. And I tell people that this is the biggest asset you could pass down to your children. And so when I look at the zoning issues, I inject that into the conversation because, yeah, we want to make it affordable, but we also want to create living assets to create generational wealth in the African American community and other underrepresented communities who need that.
Right. Now, speaking of being able to create generational wealth and fix some issues that are in our community, 1 year ago, Mayor Durkin pledged $100 million. And 1 year later, we've actually, we can put this overlay up there. I'm sorry, I'm out of order, all you.
Sorry, which one is it?
It says no. No, I don't see it there. Follow the money. There we go. Follow the money. Mayor Durkin's $100 million pledge 1 year later. Where's the money at and where's the money going? And we'll put this link in the comments over here because what we did at Converge is we actually went, there's 4 different categories where the money is at, 30 million, 30 million, 30 million, and 10 million. And we created a resource guide for our community because, yeah, I mean, you're a politician. Don't take it personal, but, you know, politicians are really good for like, yeah, this and that. And, you know, and the average person is distracted. And we just, you know, we took all the political talk out of it and said, hey, this is what Office of Civil Rights is doing. This is what ECI is doing. Here's their website. Here's how you contact them. Here's every document that was involved in the process. So that's up on our blog right now. We encourage people to go check that out. But my question to you isn't so much a past tense of like, how did we get here to this 100 million and everything else? But as if you become mayor, what is your commitment to find continuous ways? One, yes, in money, because money definitely needs to be injected, but also, you know, in innovations around policies and innovations around creating economic drivers in our community and addressing some of these things that have been in decline for a very long time. The income gap, home ownership in decline, the education gap. These are the big 3 that are continuously impacting our community.
So I talk a lot about on my campaign about creating a brand new department called the Seattle Job Center, and people don't fully understand the concept often, and I appreciate when I have a time to just go into depth about it. It's not just going on a job board and saying I'm applying for that job. It's much broader than that. That it ties into from my strategy from 0 to 4, our work on pre-K when you look at brain development. It then pipes into the Seattle Promise, which quite candidly I was the first elected to support paying for money, because it's a state responsibility to pay for education, paying for money from the city for young kids to be able to go to college for free. Okay, so I started that, got the votes, got it in the budget. Now we're using the soda tax and other revenues to support that. And then it goes into the Seattle Job Center because I always thought it critically unfair where certain people have the resources to know where the grants are, to know where the training is. For example, that there's a program at Microsoft called DigiCare, which teaches young women how to think about navigating through the technology field, because there's a huge disparity for women, and particularly African-American young girls. And so my daughter and her friends went through the DigiCare program, where available grants and foundations are giving money. I always thought it unfair that some people are better skilled or have better resourced to navigate through all of that. Even a person that's mid-age that may want to reinvent themselves. Well, where do they get tools to learn software skills or manual skills or an apprenticeship? Because there's a lot of good-paying jobs. Remember, we are a port city, a maritime city, and industry here, in addition to high-tech, in addition to health sciences. We have a good hand here in Seattle. When you look at what other cities, how they're sort of pigeonholed into an industry, we have it all here. starting off as a basis that we're a port city and a maritime city. So my Seattle Job Center, that's the city's role. We only have about 11,000 jobs for ours, whether it's police, fire, transportation, et cetera. But what we can do is create a hub such that everyone could tap into their gifts. And you reach generational wealth when you find out what their gifts are, and then you feed it and you nurture it, and you allow them to have mentors, by the way, who've walked that path, because there's no structure on that right now. I said earlier, I think that, my mom and dad did not go to college, and people will see me and they say, well, that guy's, he's got it made, they sort of know my story. They don't want to know what it was like growing up in the CD in the 60s looking like this. They don't want to hear that, because you won't draw energy from that. What you will draw energy from are the people that took me in and said, yeah, your mom and dad might have not have gone to college, but number one, I was loved. I was loved. That was my biggest privilege. I was loved. But number two, there were people that opened up the doors. And so under my leadership and the leaders around me, because I'm going to surround myself around a winning team, you're going to see doors open that have never been opened before. For me, it's personal, because that's how I'm able to sit here with this level of confidence. Because I will tell you, as a child, again, growing up in the 60s, I was excluded from a lot of conversations, brother. Okay, it was a black versus white thing and everything, and I was, well, where do I fit into this argument? So when I passed a race and social justice initiative and legislation, it was from the personal experience of being excluded from a lot of conversations. And when I worked hard in my entire life, I said, I didn't want my 3 kids to go through what I went through. They're going to have opportunities. They're going to have mentors. They're going to be loved. So the generational wealth is part of a whole ecosystem. That's why I started from 0 to 4, the continuum, all the way to the rest of their life, because it's about relationships. So for me, my life experiences would suggest that that's why I'm passionate about it. Because again, I'm judged by what they see now, but what they need to know is the opportunities that were presented in front of me. I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Is it harder now for an African American, now in 2021, to enter the University of Washington and as an example, and it could be any school, enter college and succeed in society with a good job and buying houses? Is it harder now in 2021 than it was in 1976 when I graduated from high school?
That's a difficult one for me to answer. You're the big data guy, and so I don't have any comparative data. For me, it kind of looks like it's both ways.
It's an interesting question.
So, I mean, it's interesting, and taking it to a different subject. It's something that I've actually talked about, and I'll talk to Fire Chief Scoggins about. It's something different. Is that in the 70s, there was an intentionality for black firefighters. Remember, there were so many black firefighters here. There used to be the black fireman's ball.
They're all on my campaign team.
And all this stuff. And then, you hit this point like, hey, there's a lot of black firefighters here. And then people were like, okay, we got enough of them. And you know what I'm saying? We've seen a constant decline then. And I mean, even with University of Washington, I'm not up on everything. I don't want to get flamed for being wrong, but I do remember that, it was a lot of entry there. Then it was some law that was passed or something, and then the numbers dropped down over there. I went to a historically black college or university, and it's 117 of them, and man, they've always had these doors open for us the whole time. You know what I'm saying? To get in and to graduate and try to get, so I had a different lived experience than that. But you tell me.
Well, you did what we call in the political record is dodge the question. and I didn't mean to put you on the spot because it is a tough question. And quite honestly, I thought about that in preparation for this show. A person just passed away. His name is Charles Hawkins, who was actually the African-American firefighter who was one of the unions, the head of the union before Kenny Stewart, who currently holds the position as the union I think executive director, what Kenny's title is. And you're right that the president of the black firefighters, Roberto Jordan, for example, and Reggie Ball, and I could go down the list, Jerry Willis, they're all friends because they came in during that era, okay? And I ask you the question because a lot of the pain and frustration and anger that young folks feel right now because they see the difficulties to get in colleges, it's cost prohibitive, the job application process, we are in a global economy and they're competing with people all over the world. I look at their entry points, and I have 3 young children that are in that maze, and I look at the challenges they have to do. And then I look at when I was at University of Washington, quite frankly, there were people playing dominoes in the hub, and I would turn around and say, well, how did he get into school, right? And I would see that, I was thinking that, well, this is good that we had affirmative action. That's what it was called, affirmative action, that recognized the historical racism that this country had put in place, 400 years of it, and said we have to level the playing field. And the sad part is it was never level. And of course, we know when President Obama was elected, they said it's level now. So I would say that, okay, I'm going to ramble a little bit. So I was listening to a Gil Scott-Heron song that you've probably never even heard of Gil Scott-Heron, and it's called 95 South. And he talks about being on the middle of the mountaintop and looking back at people who fought for the opportunities that I had, because I was accepted to Harvard. I was accepted to some of these great schools. I looked at the opportunities that I had, and I look at the opportunities that people have now or they don't have, and that's why I'm running for office. Because I'm not convinced it's easier now, and it should be. 40 years later, it should be. You should have been able to say unequivocally it's easier now.
So let me tell you something. Then we can rephrase that in a few different ways here, in your question. But I mean, first I would say that I grew up with no illusion that I had an expectation for anything here to be fair or whatever the propaganda was, that it was equal. And, my mama used to tell me, you're going to have to be 10 times better than anybody white that you go up against. Because you know what I'm saying? I mean, so I'm just growing up like that and knowing that, then these things that I've encountered, I've moved past them. Even hold on, let me just finish.
No, I was
even here, I mean, I went through almost a year of people marginalizing my career. They call me a live streamer, this and that. Everything else is marginalization that we come across, right? And so I understand exactly what you're talking about. That's why I said that's why my path was different. It sent me to a black school. It was like, man, we ain't gonna worry about you sitting there feeling some kind of way. We're gonna send you to a school where you're loved and you're empowered, and everybody from your professors to the janitors believes in your greatness. So it's a lot of obstacles that people might have faced, that they're whatever. I didn't face that. My brother Shakundi didn't face that. My brother Tunde didn't face that. James Salisbury Jr., my father, didn't face that. All at Elizabeth City State University. And I will say this, the reason why we sat out there and we got our asses whipped during the protests and everything else is so 20 years from now, my son is not going through the same thing. And so I understand when you're like, man, it should be easier now. It should be better now, But that's the whole point, is just like, damn, we still, it's generational, and this is just the way that it's been. The fight is continuously generational in our community, unfortunately, because people can say that it's equal or equal this or that, but it's not. And that's why we stay in the streets, man.
That's the point I wanted you to make. That's exactly the point, that when people see what they see now, they have to, I brought up at a forum Larry Ward, who most people hadn't heard of, Lim Howell, who was a prominent civil rights lawyer, and my mentor was the lawyer leading a civil rights defense over Larry Ward, who was shot by the police, and as children, we went to go see where he was shot. So the anger that we see in George Floyd is almost reigniting trauma that many of us had to fight with. You asked earlier, why am I running for mayor? Because that question that I just asked, when people say how difficult it is right now for people of color to succeed, I'm a result of good policies that people who fought, died, did everything humanly possible with to get the opportunities that I have. I'm a beneficiary of that. And my moral obligation is to fight to make sure that that's behind me.
I'm gonna send you. We were just in Mohi a few weeks ago, and we put a video out. And at the end of the video, I'm sitting there saying, because Converge's coverage of the protests is there in the Mohai, and I said there that people should go to the museum. They should study the history that's there, because it's the history of protests here in Seattle. They should study the advances, and they should see what happens when you take your foot off the gas, because that's exactly what we see. You know, I got a feeling we're going to go overtime. You got a few minutes, extra minutes for us today?
I'm all yours.
All right, we're going to take a break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about business downtown. We're also going to talk about this homeless encampment up in Bitter Lake. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Back on this rap-ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own, tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. And you see right there, a great way to support us here at Converge is through the merch. Man, we got so much good stuff coming in. If you don't have our regular Converge stuff, go ahead and pick that up. But we got our no excuses stuff. We got our Pride stuff coming. We got a lot of stuff that's coming in. You can always support us whereweconverge.com/shop. Sitting here with former council member, candidate for mayor, Bruce Harrell. You want to stay in this monitor. There you go. People going to think you're not paying attention. They don't know it's a monitor up there. So wanted to talk about business recovery, and then we'll talk about homelessness here. This was an article that was in the Seattle Times yesterday, and we'll put that up there on the screen. PCC. There it is. PCC delays opening a downtown Seattle store, citing lack of workers and customers. And that's by Paul Roberts over there at the Seattle Times. I'm sure you heard the news. Yeah. PCC's delaying. I think they're delaying the Amazon, even up there on 23rd and Jackson, the Amazon Fresh are saying that, they can't find enough workers. In some places, in downtown, they're saying they can't find enough demand. What is an indication with somebody like PCC delaying their opening? What does that resonate to you? And as far as businesses downtown having an economic recovery?
Yeah. So I think I read an article that like 450 businesses went out of business in downtown Seattle, including small businesses, restaurants, et cetera. And so we need the foot traffic. That's why we have to have a strong public safety environment, led with compassion, led with getting people off the streets, finding them housing, but we have to clean it up such that we get the foot traffic back, such that restaurants and small businesses can survive. We already know that because e-commerce now is devastating many brick and mortar institutions, that it's going to be tough to begin with. And so there are certain things you cannot do on e-commerce. You can't get your hair cut on e-commerce. You can't eat over the internet. There's certain interactions that need to occur. So when we reimagine what a downtown will look like, I think we're going to have to double down on those things that e-commerce will not destroy. And we have to have, again, the streets safe for everyone. And I think that once we get the foot traffic back, we'll get the employees back. And I go back to the Seattle Job Center such that not only can employees find jobs, but employers could find employees. And so, again, I think we will get back there because in addition to 450 businesses going out of business, I believe around 300 new businesses surface. So you will see opportunities. Small business owners get pretty ingenious when they have to, and so there's going to be new opportunities. Daycare, for example, I think you're going to see more daycare facilities downtown as well.
Yeah, people was stuck in the house for a year. I'm sure there is going to be some daycare. Yo, but I mean, another thing around this issue, right, is that people are saying that they can't find employees. They're looking for employees. But when the pandemic was first taking hold a year ago, the messaging that a lot of people got was like, hey, take this time, take an online class, learn how to study, go into school, this and that. And you had a lot of people who were in the service industry who went to coding boot camp and, who learned a different trade or job, and they're no longer in that industry. And they did exactly what people were saying you should do. If you're going to have a stay-at-home order and restaurants are going to be closed for 6 months and this and that, you go and use the opportunity to better yourself. And, so what they're saying as well is just that gap of people. I think that it's a lot of people basically who've left that sector, and I don't think necessarily they're going to return. And so that sector as well faces a challenge now to bring in new people who, to work in the service industry.
Well, it was a great time for people to retool themselves if they had the resources to do that. But many of them had, of course, urgent bills that still had to be paid. And so, yes, many people retooled themselves. Many people were just fighting to survive. I continue to think that the food service industry, as an example, I'm a strong proponent of giving employers incentives for people to get additional schooling, whether it's formal training, vocational training, we should incentivize all employers to invest in their employees. I had this discussion with Starbucks, with their baristas, because I don't think anyone wants to just serve coffee their entire life as a barista. Some may, some do it as a retirement, and I think it's real cool when people come out of retirement to become baristas. I love it when I see, we don't call them senior citizens anymore, we call them the mature demographic, when they are serving coffee, and I have a few friends that are doing that. But for the young baristas to have an employee tuition reimbursement program or flat out subsidies, I think that's where we have to head such that people could retool. So I think in this industry, when small businesses complain about the minimum wage discussions when we pass that, and there's a tip credit, whether they get tipped or not, or whether that goes towards. So these are complicated issues, but what was left out of discussion is how we could incentivize small businesses to help employees get into school and pay for their tuition.
Yeah. All right. So we've got this. You made the news. King 5 earlier this week. A few other stations and blogs when you were out there in Bitter Lake. I think most people know about the encampment that's out there on Seattle Public School property, right next to the elementary school. I got a few different clips here. Don't worry, you're not in either of them. I got a few different clips here because I've been talking to people all week about it. I talked to Colleen Echohawk, who was here on Tuesday, and I actually talked to Mayor Durkin this morning. I wanted to play Colleen Echohawk's clip here first.
Overarching question, or reality, is that through the pandemic, the federal government poured in a lot of dollars around for homelessness, and we were able to do things we had never thought we could do before. We moved hundreds and hundreds of people into hotel rooms. We used FEMA dollars, we've used ARPA dollars, we've used all kinds of dollars. The county has done it, but for some reason, the mayor's office has been reluctant to use those FEMA dollars. I have been able to be on national calls with HUD Secretary Marcia Fudge, where people are saying, yes, use those FEMA dollars, they will be reimbursed. And what is so hard about not using those dollars is that we have an opportunity now to move entire encampments into hotel rooms.
All right, so Colleen Echohawk, before I go over to you for comments, so Colleen Echohawk was talking about the use of FEMA dollars, right? And we'll go ahead and play, should be Durkin 2.
We've met with them. We're hoping to get them connected with the right outreach people. And also really hoping, one of the ideas that we're exploring is other kinds of governments, the port, Sound Transit have partnered with the city with their land to create some tiny house villages. So we're hoping the school district, which is one of the larger landholders in Seattle, can identify some property that we can work together to stand up a tiny home village to really bring more people inside.
All right. So Bruce Harrell, you were out there in Bitter Lake. Colleen Echo Hawk is like, hey, we need to use the FEMA dollars. That Mayor Durkin has not so much been for FEMA dollars, but Mayor Durkin is like, hey, Seattle Public Schools, you guys are one of the biggest property owners here. You got a lot of property you can use. Let's work together and set up some tiny homes. You were out there. You talked to people. What are some of the solutions that you think might be in line?
Well, I think I was the only candidate that called for the $116 million of ARPA funds, recovery funds, that we received from the government that we didn't know we were going to get, that the majority of that should have gone directly to housing for encampments like that. And so I think someone had criticized me going out there by saying that, well, I can't distance myself from it because I served on the council for 12 years. My point was not to distance myself from it at all. In fact, my point was to do quite the opposite, to bring it in proximity, to bring attention to the issue, because I faced it where you had, number one, residents who are just saying, we want services, we want housing. And you have homeowners and residents that live around there saying our water is of poor quality now because it's just dirty, that it's not safe for their kids to go to, and they're frustrated and very angry. And no one had even visited them. No one had been out there. And I'd actually gone out there the day before to walk around and see exactly firsthand what it looked like. So I would use, number one, the lion's share of the ARPA funds. I would support using FEMA dollars, but my concern about FEMA dollars is the bureaucracy, that I've only heard horror stories about getting FEMA dollars in and out of the door, and I believe in an urgent solution. So I called Dr. Brent Jones the morning of and the day before to talk about what solutions would look like, and I do not believe it's the school district's responsibility. They have to educate 54,000 kids, and they have to work with their administrators and their teachers to make sure that that is done optimally. They are not a social service agency in that respect, and so I think it's the city's responsibility to have case managers out there right now finding out what the needs of the homeless individuals are, what the communities are. And I spoke with them. I spoke with a young man named Anthony who was saying exactly they need services. And there was another sort of social worker type that said he will guarantee me that they will be gone in a couple of months because he knows what service they need and how to go about it. And so if I brought attention to it, that was good. I know a few other candidates followed me after. But I think this is the city's responsibility, and I think they need to step up. But certainly the goal was not to distance myself from it. It was to familiarize myself with it, become part of the community. That's part of our community. Even though it's far from where we're sitting right now, that's part of our Seattle community.
Right. And so two things is one, this homeless definitely has been an issue for a long time here. And what were some of the things, what were the big homeless issues when you were in office there at City Council? What were some of the things that you did or you were part of addressing?
Well, first of all, no one can take the blame for decades and decades and decades of underfunding mental illness, underfunding drug and alcohol treatment, underfunding special education, all of the components that will go into someone unfortunately being shelterless. The rising costs of medical care and medical treatment. That's again why I'm coming up with a Healthy Seattle, which is going to be a health care system for everybody, even in particular when people fall through the cracks of the Affordable Care Act. And I'll be the first to say if there's something I could have done better, tell me the policy, tell me the law, tell me the budget decisions, and if I screw it up, I'll say I screwed up. I don't run away from responsibility or blame. So what we did was we brought in the best experts, and I've tried to read everything I could to get my hands on homelessness. I just finished a book a few weeks ago called The Book on Ending Homelessness by Ian Dijon. I finished a book by Desmond called Evicted. I try to find out what works, because I'm not an expert in this stuff, right? I don't know who is the expert in this stuff, but I find out who the experts are and try to incorporate best practice. So we looked at a regional approach. That was a policy that we developed, that it just can't be done in Seattle's 88 square miles. We looked at what a regional framework would look like, and that was how the organization that Mark Dronesville had was created. We looked at a housing first approach, which says house them first. Don't condition it upon their drug and alcohol condition as an example. We looked at what I introduced in 2012, I believe, was introducing our city being a human rights city under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That came out of my committee, and I was the sponsor of it. Because I said that will be the theoretical foundation by which we will address all of our issues of homelessness. And my interpretation of the Declaration of Human Rights is that it's inhumane to allow someone to live in a camp, in a tent, without water, without heat. That we have to have a certain sense of urgency to get them out. So I question people when they say, well, Bruce, you were on the council for a number of years. I say, well, what policies, not implementation, what policies should we have passed to be better?
Right, and now taking this issue here to today, I mean, how would you propose exactly to get past this impasse? I mean,
Sure.
I reached out to Seattle Public Schools. I talked to them. I didn't talk to Dr. Jones, like you have, but I talked to the PIO out there, and there's been letters going back in between Seattle Public Schools and the mayor's office. Seattle Public Schools is basically saying like, hey, we don't have the expertise. We'd like you to help. And then City of Seattle is saying like, okay, we do have the expertise. We're happy to help you. And my understanding is right now is that perhaps the deputy mayors and things like that are meeting on this. But how would you go forward? So 160 million of those funds would be great. But in this impasse right here, what are some of the recommendations or routes that you would have if you were mayor?
Well, I would direct the case managers to go out there immediately and start collecting information from those residents to understand exactly what needs they have. Because you don't assume that they're all have the same needs, and so we must capture that information, meet them where they are. I'd also send neighborhood experts to the communities that live around there to let them know we feel your pain. We understand that you want to enjoy this park, but you're afraid that there's needles around here, that and listening to the residents, by the way, they're saying that there's dangerous objects down there, that there's they're using the water to bathe in, and it's just not a sanitary place, and it needs to be cleaned up. So I'd also send neighborhood advocates there on behalf of the city, let them know we hear you, we are present. And then based on the case management feedback that we get from individualized case managers, whether it's tiny homes, whether it's hotel vouchers, whether it's reuniting someone for the family. For example, I said that in the LGBTQ community, that a youth in the LGBTQ community are 4 times more likely to be homeless than someone not from the community because of family issues and rejection in their family. And I know your personal story that you shared publicly with your brother, which was a very heartfelt story about the challenges he had to go through being rejected by certain communities. And so when we see that demographic being 4 times more likely to be unhoused, then a case manager would suggest, how do we address that? Through family counseling, through self-esteem training, such that this person could feel better about themselves and just realize that they were wrong, right? So case management is not child's play. It's very serious work, because now you're dealing with a person that may have had decades and decades of abuse, whether it's verbal abuse or physical abuse, whatever kind of abuse they've suffered. So I would get my case managers out there immediately and start a rapid rehousing effort to make sure that they are housed. And then everyone can enjoy it. This is a win-win, and there are win-win scenarios. And I believe the district will be 100% amenable to that, but that's part of the controversy that I think a couple of board members sort of rejected that. And I don't know if that's true or not, so I won't opine on that.
Yeah, I can't confirm either if a post was there or not there, but they're saying it was there and it was deleted, but that's not the issue at this point. The issue is really these, like I said, these human beings who are out there. We're over time, and I appreciate you making extra time for us. I'll give you the last word here, and then we'll wrap up and we'll end the show. So there's a camera right there.
I'll make it a quick last word, and that is, as I run for mayor, I try to come across as having all the right answers at the right time or thinking about the solutions. But the truth of the matter is that I need a whole team. I'm going to make mistakes. I ask for grace there. I may say the wrong thing or lose my temper or crack a joke at the wrong time. But if there's one thing that's been consistent my entire life, and that is I am authentic. And I will try to make sure everyone's at the table. I value everyone's opinion. And I'll always lead with a sense of faith. That's why you see a lot of faith leaders on my website, and compassion and love. And that doesn't excuse poor behavior or misconduct. I'm not saying it does, but I would ask that the Seattle realize that I think these are the components that the next mayor should have, whether it's me or someone else, that they should lead with those values. And I trust that the Seattle voters will make the right decision.
All right. Bruce Harrell, candidate for mayor of Seattle, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Omari.
All right, we're going to keep you right there because I'm going into this camera right here. Got a few programming notes for everybody. Exciting night right here at Converge Media. At 7 o'clock, we have another episode of Clapback Culture. And actually, Besa Gordon's joining in. She's filling in for Mike Davis today. So you'll find Besa there. And 8 o'clock, we're going to continue this discussion here. And we'll go and put this up. It's the politics of homelessness. So we've got an edition of Writer's Block that's coming up. And man, it's a pretty diverse panel. We've got Erica C. Barnett will be on there. Then we also have Hannah Scott from Cairo FM. We have Mike Davis of the South Seattle Emerald, and also Ari McKenna of the South Seattle Emerald, and I'll be popping in there as well. So that's 8 o'clock tonight, the politics of homelessness. 7 o'clock tonight is Clapback Culture. So we got a lot of programming for you here. Again, want to tell everybody we appreciate you. We appreciate your support. And man, it's been a long week. I don't think you're going to see me here tomorrow. I will take a few days off, but we'll definitely be back on Monday. So in that case, go forward in your purpose, go forward in your humanity. And until Monday at 11 a.m., peace. Got to hit him with the peace sign, Bruce.
Peace.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun.